The transmission. The warship Indomitable drifted through space, its hull scarred from battle. Inside, Captain Elias Cross sat in the command chair, staring at the black void beyond the glass. The war had lasted too long. Humanity was losing. The Zarkari Empire had conquered planet after planet, crushing all resistance. Elias had fought in this war for 20 years. He had lost friends. He had lost his home. And worst of all, he had lost his daughter. Mira had been only 6 years old when Earth fell. She had been on an evacuation ship. He never saw her again. The record said the ship was destroyed. But now something impossible had happened. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we received a distress signal. But it's old Earth code. It's human." Elias frowned. Human distress calls were rare now. Most humans were dead or enslaved. "Play it," he ordered. The voice that came through the speakers froze his blood. "This is Lieutenant Mira Cross of the Terran Resistance. If anyone can hear this, please, I need help. I am held captive in the Zarkari Prime war camp." Elias gripped the arms of his chair. His heart pounded. He leaned forward, listening to the static. "I don't know how much time I have left. The guards say I will be executed soon. If there's anyone out there, please, I don't want to die like this." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Elias felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. It couldn't be real. His daughter was dead. But that voice, it sounded like her. "Scan for location," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his fingers clenched into fists. The officer checked the readings. The signal came from Zarkari Prime, their most secure prison. He hesitated. "Captain, it's a trap." Elias didn't care. Trap or not, he had to know. "Plot a course," he said. The first officer, Commander Rains, stepped forward. "Sir, the Council will never approve this mission. If we go into Zarkari territory alone, we won't come back." Elias turned to him. "If that's my daughter, I'm not waiting for approval." He walked to the center of the bridge, looking at his crew. They had followed him through hell before. Would they follow him again? "We are outnumbered. The enemy is stronger. But if there's even a chance that she's alive, I have to take it. I won't order anyone to come with me. But if you stand with me, we leave now." The bridge was silent. Then, one by one, his crew nodded. "We're with you, sir," Rain said. Elias nodded back. "Then let's bring her home." The chase begins. The Indomitable jumped to hyperspace, heading straight into enemy territory. Elias stood at the war table, staring at the holographic map of Zarkari Prime. The prison was deep underground, surrounded by layers of defenses. "No ships get in or out without clearance," Rain said. "The moment we drop out of hyperspace, their fleet will see us." Elias crossed his arms. "Then we go silent. Power down the weapons, run dark. We'll drift in their shadow." The plan was dangerous. A stealth approach might work for a short time, but as soon as the Zarkari detected them, they would be surrounded. Still, there was no other choice. Elias looked at the old photo on his wrist console. A little girl with brown hair, laughing in his arms. "I'm coming, Mira." Enemy territory. The warship dropped out of hyperspace, and the red glow of Zarkari Prime filled the windows. It was a dead planet, covered in black rock and metal. The main prison complex was built into the ground, with massive towers watching the skies. The Indomitable floated quietly, pretending to be just another wreck in the debris field. "Enemy patrols," the pilot whispered. "3 ships, moving fast." "Hold position," Elias ordered. His pulse beat like a war drum. The enemy ships passed overhead, their spotlights sweeping the void. For a moment, Elias thought they were caught. But then, the patrols moved away. They were in. "Prepare a landing team," Elias said. "We're going in." Suspense ending. The countdown begins. In the Zarkari prison, Mira sat in a cold, dark cell. Her body ached. She had been beaten, but she refused to break. She stared at the small metal chip in her palm, the only thing she had left. She had stolen it from a guard. If she could use it right, maybe she could override the doors. Outside, the guards were talking. "The humans won't come for her," one of them laughed. "Her kind is weak. Her father is long dead." Mira clenched her jaw. They were wrong. Her father was alive. And if he was out there, he would come. She had to hold on, just a little longer. Far above, in the blackness of space, her father's warship approached. The rescue had begun. A daughter in chains. Mira Cross sat on the cold, hard floor of her cell, staring at the single crack in the ceiling where the dull red light seeped through. The Zarkari prison was built to break people. The walls hummed with hidden energy fields, ready to electrocute anyone who got too close. The air was thick with the scent of metal and damp stone. The screams of other prisoners echoed through the corridors, some begging, some cursing, most just fading into silence. She had learned long ago that silence was the worst sound of all. Her hands were shackled, heavy restraints digging into her wrists. She had lost count of the days. Time had no meaning here, only pain, only waiting. But she refused to surrender. Footsteps approached, sharp and deliberate. The door slid open, revealing a tall Zarkari officer, his scales a deep shade of blue, his yellow eyes filled with cold amusement. He held a metal rod, tapping it against his palm. "You still think your people will come for you?" His voice was smooth, mocking. "You are alone, forgotten. The humans are scattered, dying. You will die here too." Mira lifted her head, meeting his gaze without fear. "You don't know my father." The officer laughed, crouching down to her level. "Oh, but we do. Captain Elias Cross, one of your last so-called heroes. He fought hard when your world burned, didn't he? And yet, here you are, rotting in a cell, and he is nowhere to be found." Mira's fingers curled into fists. Her father was alive. He had to be. She could still remember the way he looked when she was a child, his steady hands lifting her onto his shoulders, the warmth of his voice as he told her bedtime stories about the stars. She had held onto those memories through every beating, every sleepless night. They couldn't take them from her. The officer stood, his tail flicking behind him. "Soon, we will move you to the execution chamber. Perhaps then, you will understand." The door hissed shut behind him. Mira exhaled slowly. She wouldn't wait for execution. She wouldn't let them decide how her story ended. She slid her fingers under her sleeve, feeling the smooth metal chip hidden against her wrist. A stolen security bypass. It wasn't much, but it was a chance. She just needed the right moment. The warship approaches. Above the prison, in the cold emptiness of space, the Indomitable drifted like a ghost. Systems powered low, weapons silent. It blended into the wreckage field orbiting Zarkari Prime, invisible to the enemy patrols scanning for intruders. On the bridge, Captain Elias Cross stood with his arms crossed, staring at the massive structure below. The fortress was a monster of metal and stone, its thick walls designed to withstand orbital bombardment. The Zarkari took no chances with their prisoners. "She's in there," Elias said, his voice steady but tight. Commander Rains adjusted his visor, reading the data feed. "We found the signal source. Sub-level 3. But security is layered. Biometric scanners, patrols, automated sentries. Even if we make it inside, getting out is another problem." Elias nodded. "There was always a way. We're not here for a fight. We get in, we get her, we get out. Quick and quiet." Rains raised an eyebrow. "And if it's a trap?" Elias turned to him. "Then we spring it on our terms." The prison stirs. Back in her cell, Mira listened. The guards were shifting, their movements quicker, more urgent. Something was happening. Then she heard it, a distant explosion. Her heart pounded. She moved quickly, slipping the security bypass chip into the control panel near her restraints. The red light flickered. A small beep confirmed her success. The cuffs around her wrists unlocked with a soft click, and she flexed her fingers. Outside, an alarm blared. The guards shouted in their guttural language. Mira didn't need to understand the words. She knew what they meant. Someone was coming. Hope flickered to life inside her. She had held on this long. She could hold on a little longer. Her father was coming for her. Suspense ending. Far above, the Indomitable prepared to send down its strike team. In the depths of the prison, Mira took her first step toward freedom. Neither of them knew what awaited them in the darkness ahead. But they were about to find out. The impossible rescue. The wind howled through the jagged canyons of Zarkari Prime, a barren world where the land itself seemed to resist life. The prison fortress loomed in the distance, a monolith of black metal, its spires cutting into the blood-red sky. Spotlights swept the perimeter, scanning for intruders. Towering sentry droids marched along the walls, their red eyes pulsing like embers in the dark. High above, hidden in the debris field, the Indomitable floated in silence. Inside the warship's dimly lit hangar, Elias Cross checked his gear, strapping on his weapons with precise movements. He had done countless missions behind enemy lines, but this one was different. This one was personal. His strike team stood around him. Rains, Silva, Keller, and Voss, some of the best fighters left in the Terran fleet. Their armor was dark, designed to blend into the night. Their weapons were suppressed, meant for precision, not destruction. This wasn't a battle. It was a rescue. Rain studied the holographic map one last time. "We land here," he said, pointing to a narrow ventilation shaft near the outer wall. "From there, we move fast." Mira's signal came from sublevel 3. "We get her, and we get out before they know what hit them." Elias nodded. "Simple in theory, deadly in practice. Stealth is our only advantage," Silva added. "If we get caught in open combat, we won't last long." Elias secured his helmet and picked up his rifle. "Then let's make sure we don't get caught." The hangar doors hissed open, revealing the black void beyond. One by one, the team leaped from the ship, free-falling toward the surface. The descent into darkness. The planet rushed toward them, wind screaming past their suits. They moved in formation, bodies angled, arms tight to their sides. The Zarkari patrol ships drifted far below, their engines humming as they scanned the desert wasteland for threats. No one saw them coming. At the last moment, their thrusters fired, slowing their descent. They landed in silence, crouched in the shadows near the edge of the fortress wall. Dust swirled around them as they rose to their feet. Elias tapped his visor, scanning the structure. The ventilation shaft was just ahead, half buried in rock. Voss moved first, prying open the grate with a silent flick of his wrist blade. One by one, the team slipped inside, disappearing into the belly of the fortress. The tunnels were narrow, twisting in unnatural angles. The air was thick with dust and the scent of burnt metal. Somewhere above them, the Zarkari continued their endless patrols, unaware that ghosts had entered their domain. Elias led the way, his footsteps soundless against the steel. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with focus. Every step brought him closer to her. His daughter was waiting, and he would not leave this place without her. A prisoner's gamble. In the depths of the fortress, Mira Cross pressed herself against the cold wall of her cell. The stolen security chip had unlocked her cuffs, but the door was still sealed. She needed a way out. Through the reinforced glass, she saw the guards in the hallway, their armored forms blocking the only exit. They were restless, muttering in their guttural language. Something had them on edge. Then she heard it. A distant rumble. Faint, but unmistakable. An explosion. Her pulse quickened. That wasn't normal. That wasn't routine. They're coming. But if she waited too long, the guards would reinforce security. If her father was here, he'd need her to move now. She glanced at the guard's energy baton hanging just outside her reach. She had one chance. Taking a deep breath, She stumbled forward, making herself look weaker than she was. Then she collapsed, her body hitting the floor with a sharp thud. The guards reacted instantly. One of them cursed, stepping closer, unlocking the door. The moment he was inside, Mira lunged. Her hands wrapped around the baton before he could react. She twisted, jamming it into his ribs. The air filled with the sharp crack of energy as he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The second guard roared, raising his weapon. But Mira was faster. She spun the baton and drove it into his throat, cutting off his cry. He collapsed against the wall, his body twitching. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from adrenaline. She grabbed the fallen guard's weapon, her breathing heavy. She was free. But the fight wasn't over yet. The convergence. Elias and his team reached sublevel 3, moving like shadows through the corridors. They took down patrols with silent precision, dragging the bodies into the dark. Then Elias saw it. Her cell member. He moved faster, ignoring protocol, ignoring the risk. He had to see her. As he approached, the door was already open. His breath caught in his throat. The bodies of 2 Zarkari guards lay on the floor, and standing in the middle of the room, holding a stolen rifle, was a woman. She turned at the sound of footsteps, her dark eyes wide, her hair tangled, her uniform stained with blood and dirt. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then recognition dawned in her eyes. Dad. Elias exhaled, a strange, broken sound escaping his throat. Mira. She barely had time to process his presence before the alarm blared to life. The guards had discovered the breach. Elias grabbed her by the shoulders. We're getting out of here. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Dozens of them. Rains cursed. We're out of time. Elias raised his weapon. Mira did the same. Father and daughter stood side by side. The enemy was coming. And they were ready. Suspense ending. The firefight begins. The Zarkari stormed into the hallway, weapons raised. The air exploded with gunfire, the walls flashing with red and blue light. The impossible rescue had begun, and humanity would not be denied. Escape under fire. The air shook with gunfire. Red plasma bolts seared through the corridor, slicing into the walls, sending showers of molten metal cascading to the floor. The alarm's piercing wail echoed through the prison as the Zarkari guards stormed forward, their heavy boots pounding against the steel. Elias pressed Mira behind cover, raising his rifle and firing in controlled bursts. 3 guards fell before they could react, their massive reptilian bodies crumpling against the walls. Mira, still gripping the stolen weapon, fought to steady her breathing. Just minutes ago, she had been alone, certain she would die in this place. Now her father was here. Real. Alive. Fighting for her. But the moment was short-lived. The enemy kept coming. Rain's voice crackled over the comms. Captain, we need an exit. Now. Elias scanned the corridor. The main route back to the ventilation shaft was blocked. More guards were flooding in, cutting off their escape. They couldn't go back the way they came. We need another way out, Elias said, reloading his rifle. Mira's mind worked fast. She knew the prison's layout. She had studied every hall, every guard pattern, looking for a weakness. Now she finally had a chance to use it. There's a surface tunnel on the lower level, she said quickly. It leads to the supply docks. If we can reach it. A plasma grenade exploded nearby, cutting her off. The force threw them backward, slamming them against the wall. Elias groaned as he pushed himself up. Mira coughed, shaking off the shock. The Zarkari were closing in, weapons raised, snarling in their alien tongue. And then, a thunderous explosion rocked the entire prison. A desperate gamble. The ceiling shook. Metal beams groaned under the pressure. Distant screams filled the air as debris rained down. Silva's voice came over the comms, urgent. We just hit the power core. You've got 5 minutes before this whole place starts falling apart. Elias gritted his teeth. That's all we need." He grabbed Mira's wrist. "Run." They sprinted through the chaos, weaving between falling debris and panicked guards. But once organized Zarkari forces were breaking apart, scrambling to contain the sudden collapse. Smoke poured from the walls, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning circuits. A group of enemy soldiers rounded the corner ahead, too many to fight head-on. Mira didn't hesitate. She dove to the side, sliding across the floor as she fired. Her shot struck the light fixtures above, sending a cascade of sparks and heavy steel raining down onto the soldiers. Elias followed her lead, grabbing a fallen enemy rifle and unleashing a barrage of covering fire. Mira stole a glance at him as he fought. She had heard the stories of Elias Cross, the war hero, but this was the first time she had seen it with her own eyes. He fought like a man who refused to die, like someone who had lost too much already, like someone who had just gotten back the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. The bridge collapses. The surface tunnel was just ahead, but a Zarkari captain stood in their path. He was larger than the others, covered in thick armor, his energy blade crackling with red lightning. His glowing eyes locked onto Elias, and he grinned. "I know who you are, human," the captain growled. "The infamous Elias Cross." Elias lifted his rifle, but before he could fire, the Zarkari lunged, moving impossibly fast. The energy blade sliced through the air, barely missing Elias' head as he ducked. Sparks flew as it carved into the wall behind him. Mira reacted instantly, raising her stolen rifle, but the captain backhanded her before she could fire. The force sent her sprawling to the ground, her weapon skidding across the floor. Elias moved without thinking. He rammed his shoulder into the Zarkari's chest, knocking the alien back a step. In the same motion, he grabbed a combat knife from his belt and plunged it between the armor plates at the enemy's side. The captain roared in pain, but he wasn't done. His free hand grabbed Elias by the throat and lifted him into the air. Elias gasped, struggling against the iron grip. He could feel the alien's claws digging into his skin, the pressure crushing his windpipe. Mira, dazed but alive, saw her father choking, saw the blade still embedded in the captain's side, and she knew what she had to do. With a shout, she grabbed a fallen plasma pistol and fired point-blank into the wound Elias had made. The plasma bolt burned through flesh and armor, tearing through the Zarkari's body. The captain staggered, his grip loosening. Elias wrenched free, falling to the ground with a harsh gasp. Mira didn't wait. She fired again, and again, until the captain collapsed, unmoving. Breathing heavily, she reached out, gripping her father's arm. "Are you okay?" Elias coughed, wincing as he rubbed his throat. Then he smiled, proud. "I am now." The final stretch. The tunnel entrance was just ahead, but the entire structure was falling apart. Metal beams collapsed, flames erupted from broken gas lines, and the sound of twisting steel filled the air. They had seconds left. Rain's voice crackled over the comms. "Indomitable is inbound, but the LZ is hot. Move your ass, Captain." Mira and Elias sprinted forward, leaping over debris, dodging falling rubble. Behind them, the last of the Zarkari forces were still in pursuit, desperate to stop their escape. Then, the ground shuddered violently. The bridge leading to the tunnel began to collapse. Mira ran as fast as she could, but she wasn't going to make it. The floor was breaking apart beneath her. Elias saw it happen in an instant. Without thinking, he grabbed her hand and threw her forward, just as the bridge gave way beneath him. Mira tumbled across the floor, landing hard. She rolled onto her knees, eyes wide with horror. Her father was dangling from the ledge, gripping a jagged metal beam. "Dad!" she screamed, scrambling forward. Elias gritted his teeth, trying to pull himself up, but his grip was slipping. Below him, the fires raged, ready to consume him. Mira reached out, her fingers stretching. "Take my hand." For a second, their eyes met. Then, he let go. Mira lunged forward, catching his wrist just in time. With a desperate cry, she pulled him up with all her strength. Elias collapsed onto solid ground, gasping. Mira clutched his jacket, her voice shaking. "Don't you ever do that again." Elias let out a weak chuckle. "I'll try." A massive explosion erupted behind them, and they had no time to rest. Ahead, the exit loomed, and beyond it, the stars. The final escape had begun. The price of freedom. The tunnel exit exploded open, throwing Mira and Elias forward as a shockwave of heat and smoke roared behind them. They hit the ground hard, rolling across the scorched landing pad. The docking bay stretched ahead, half buried in the crumbling remains of the Zarkari prison complex. Fires raged across the platform, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal. Above them, the Indomitable hovered in the sky, its thrusters blazing as it dodged enemy fire. The comms crackled with urgent voices. "Captain, you've got incoming." A full squad of Zarkari elites. Elias dragged himself up, his breath ragged. His body ached from the escape, from the fights, from nearly falling to his death. But they weren't safe yet. Mira was already moving, scanning the platform. Their extraction point was just ahead, a small landing craft that had been left unguarded in the chaos. If they could reach it, they could get off this cursed rock. She turned to her father. "We make a run for it." Elias nodded, raising his rifle. "Stay close." Then the Zarkari strike team emerged from the smoke. The last stand. They came in formation, 10 heavily armed warriors, their armor gleaming under the fire-lit sky. Their leader, a massive brute covered in ceremonial scars, stepped forward, his energy blade humming with lethal power. Elias recognized the markings on his chest. A Zarkari Judicator, the highest rank among their warriors. The Judicator tilted his head, staring at Elias with amusement. "The human legend," he growled. "I should have expected you to come for your wretched spawn." Mira gritted her teeth but said nothing. She had learned long ago that Zarkari loved their insults. Words meant nothing. Survival meant everything. Elias leveled his rifle at the warlord. "You can step aside, or you can die here." The Judicator laughed, deep and rumbling. Bold words for a dying species. He gestured forward. His warriors charge. Elias and Mira opened fire, their shots cutting through the first wave. The air erupted in chaos. Bolts of energy tearing through bodies, the sharp crack of plasma against armor. Mira ducked behind a cargo crate, reloading in seconds. Elias, moving with deadly precision, fired 3 shots, dropping 2 Zarkari before they could reach cover. He twisted, grabbing a fallen energy pistol from a corpse and dual-wielded, firing in both directions. Mira used his covert fire to flank, moving fast, her stolen rifle glowing hot as she took out an enemy before he could turn. But the Judicator wasn't standing idle. With a roar, he lunged forward, covering the distance with terrifying speed. His energy blade sliced through the air, forcing Elias to roll away at the last second. The impact sent sparks flying as the blade carved into the steel floor. The warlord was too fast, too strong. Elias blocked the next strike with his rifle, but the blade cut clean through it. Sparks erupted as the weapon split in half, useless. The Judicator grabbed Elias by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "You should have let her die," he sneered, tightening his grip. Elias struggled, gasping for breath. His vision blurred. Then, a shot rang out. Mira, standing just behind the warlord, had fired point-blank into his back. The Judicator staggered, releasing Elias as he roared in pain. Mira didn't stop. She emptied the entire clip into his chest, her hand steady, her eyes cold. The Zarkari warlord collapsed, his massive form crashing to the ground. Mira let out a slow breath, lowering her weapon. Elias coughed, rubbing his throat. He looked up at her, a wry smile forming despite the pain. "That's my girl. The final choice." The Indomitable descended lower, its engines shaking the ground as the pilot's voice echoed in their earpieces. Extraction window closing. You have 30 seconds. Mira grabbed Elias' arm. Come on. They sprinted toward the small landing craft. The Zarkari reinforcements were closing in. Enemy ships circled above, and new squads were storming onto the platform. They were seconds away from being overwhelmed. Then, Elias stumbled. Mira turned in alarm. Blood soaked through his side, a wound he had been hiding. His face was pale, his movements sluggish. No, she whispered. No, no, you can't do this now. Elias forced a weak smile. I've had worse. Mira shook her head. She knew he was lying. He was fading, and fast. The ramp to the landing craft lowered. Rains was inside, shouting, Get in. Now. Mira threw Elias' arm over her shoulder, half carrying him as they stumbled forward. Behind them, a Zarkari gunship lined up for a kill shot. Mira turned, raising her weapon. Then the Indomitable's rail cannons fired. The enemy ship erupted in a fireball, debris raining down across the platform. They barely made it up the ramp before the doors sealed shut. The pilot gunned the thrusters. The landing craft lifted off, escaping into the sky as the prison behind them collapsed into fire and ruin. The price paid. Elias leaned against the bulkhead, his breathing ragged. Blood dripped onto the floor. Mira knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Rains crouched down, shaking his head. He's not gonna make it unless we get him to medbay now. Mira's hands tightened into fists. No, not after all this. She looked down at her father, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Elias had survived so much, but this wound, this was different. Mira gritted her teeth. You don't get to die, Dad. Elias smiled weakly. I'll try not to. She took his hand in hers, gripping it tightly, as the landing craft sped toward safety. But deep inside, she knew, the fight wasn't over yet. Humanity's fury. The Indomitable tore through space at breakneck speed, its engines burning white-hot as it fled the dying world of Zarkari Prime. Behind it, the once unbreakable prison fortress crumbled in a storm of fire and metal, its spires collapsing into the raging inferno below. Inside the landing craft, Mira knelt beside Elias, pressing blood-soaked bandages against his wound. His skin was clammy, his breathing uneven. His strength was fading, and she could see it, the ghost of pain in his eyes, the way his fingers trembled when he tried to grip her hand. You stay with me, she whispered fiercely, her jaw clenched. You hear me. You're not leaving now. Elias forced a weak smirk. I've already come back from the dead once. Then do it again, she snapped. The ship shook violently as enemy fire streaked past them. Red laser bolts tore through space, barely missing the hull. The Zarkari weren't letting them escape without a fight. Rain's voice crackled over the comms. We've got company. 3 warships closing fast. Mira's stomach twisted. They were outnumbered. The Indomitable was battered, low on firepower, and their fleet wasn't close enough to help. And Elias was dying. She turned toward Rains, something cold settling in her chest. Then we make sure they regret coming after us. The battle in the stars. The Indomitable spun through the void, weaving between enemy fire, its rail cannons blazing in every direction. The 3 Zarkari warships closed in, their sleek black hulls cutting through the darkness like knives. From the command deck, Commander Rains took the helm. Weapons online. Bring up the railguns. Target their engines. The gunners responded instantly. Metal slugs fired at near-light speed, slamming into the lead warship's thrusters. The enemy ship shuddered, its propulsion system sparking, but it kept coming. They're adapting, Silva growled. They know we're running on fumes. Rain's jaw tightened. Then we give them something they don't expect. Mira's decision. In the medbay, Mira refused to leave Elias' side. The ship trembled under enemy fire, but her entire world had shrunk to the shallow rise and fall of his chest, the fading warmth of his skin. The medics were doing everything they could, but she could see it in their eyes. It wasn't enough. The wound was deep, the internal bleeding severe. Mira's hands clenched into tight fists. She had spent her whole life fighting, surviving, pushing forward no matter the odds. She had built walls around herself, armor stronger than any metal, because it was the only way to live in a universe that wanted humans dead. But now, watching her father slip away, that armor cracked. No, she wouldn't let this happen. Mira stood abruptly, her mind made up. She stormed onto the bridge, eyes burning with purpose. We need to turn around. Rains whipped his head toward her. What? That's suicide. We don't have time for a slow escape. We hit them hard. Head on. Rains stared at her like she was insane. We're outgunned, Mira. Mira stepped forward. We have one shot. If we disable their flagship, we break their chain of command. The others will hesitate. If we run, we die anyway. So we fight. Rains hesitated. Then he turned to the crew. You heard her. Prepare for an attack run. The Indomitable twisted in space, its engines roaring to full power. The Zarkari had no idea what was coming. The charge. The flagship loomed ahead, massive and terrifying, its energy cannons warming up for a final kill shot. The Indomitable hurtled toward it like a meteor. Inside the ship, the crew braced themselves. Gunners loaded their last rounds. Pilots gritted their teeth, hands steady on the controls. Medics worked desperately to keep Elias alive. And Mira stood at the front of the bridge, her father's fire burning in her eyes. Lock onto their main reactor, she ordered. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to break them. The targeting system beeped, locking onto the weakest point in the enemy hull. Fire. The Indomitable's final railgun rounds tore through the void. The slugs struck true, ripping into the flagship's core, detonating its reactor in a blinding fireball. The explosion rippled outward, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The two remaining warships hesitated, momentarily leaderless, uncertain. That was all they needed. Now, Rain shouted, "Jump to hyperspace." The Indomitable vanished into the stars. Aftermath. The ship re-emerged in deep space, far from the battle. The crew exhaled in relief, but Mira barely heard them. She was already running. She burst into the medbay, skidding to a stop beside her father's bed. The monitors beeped weakly. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale. Mira's hands trembled. "Dad," she whispered. Elias' eyes fluttered open. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, he smiled. "You really are my daughter." Mira let out a shaky laugh, her chest tight with relief. She gripped his hand, holding it tightly. "You're damn right I am." Outside, in the endless void of space, the war was far from over. But for now, humanity had won one more fight. No one left behind. The Indomitable floated in deep space, its hull scarred from battle, its crew exhausted but alive. The warship had fought impossible odds and survived. But for Mira, survival wasn't enough. She sat beside Elias' bed in the medbay, watching the steady but weak rise and fall of his chest. The soft hum of the medical machines filled the silence, a rhythmic reminder that time was still against them. His face was paler than before. The medics had done all they could, but the wound had drained too much from him. The damage was severe, and even with advanced tech, he was fading. Mira clenched his hand tightly, as if holding on to him physically would keep him from slipping away. "Come on," she whispered. "You didn't fight a whole damn war just to leave me now." Elias' eyes flickered open, and a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I trained you to be tough," he murmured. "Didn't think you'd use it on me." Mira let out a choked laugh, but her grip never loosened. "That's what you get for raising a fighter." He tried to sit up but winced, pain lancing through his side. Mira pressed him back down gently. "Don't be stupid," she muttered. "You're staying right here until we get you help." But help wasn't coming. Not unless they made it happen. A desperate call. On the bridge, Commander Rains stood over the holomap, his expression grim. The Indomitable was running on fumes, its medical supplies dwindling, its weapons nearly useless after the last fight. Worse, they were still in hostile space. If the Zarkari found them before they could repair, there would be no escape. Silva's voice cut through the tense air. "We need to send out a distress call." Rains shook his head and risk alerting the enemy. "We're already dead if we stay here," she shot back. "We have no fleet, no reinforcements. We need to call for help." Mira walked onto the bridge then, her stance rigid, her face set with a new kind of determination. "Send the signal," she ordered. Rains hesitated. "Mira, if the Zarkari pick it up first." "Then let them," she said. Her voice was ice, her father's fire burning in her eyes. "We don't hide anymore." Rains stared at her for a long second. Then he gave the order. A signal pulsed out into space, a beacon of defiance, a call to arms. And humanity answered. Humanity's fury. Hours passed. Silence stretched through the void. Then the alarms flared. Mira was back at Elias' side when the call came through. "Captain, we've got incoming ships." She rushed to the bridge, her heart hammering. Friend or foe? Silva stared at the screen, her eyes wide. Both. A Zarkari war fleet had emerged from hyperspace, closing in fast. But just as Mira's pulse spiked, another wave of ships jumped in behind them. Terran warships. Hundreds of them. The distress signal had reached the remnants of the human resistance, and they had come for their people. The holoscreen lit up with transmissions from fleet captains, resistance leaders, old war veterans who had refused to die quietly. "Indomitable, this is Admiral Vasquez of the TSS Valiant. We received your distress signal." Mira's breath caught. They had a fleet again. The Zarkari ships hesitated, sensing the shift in power. For the first time, they weren't the hunters. They were prey. Admiral Vasquez's voice rang through the bridge. "All ships, fire." The void erupted. Human warships stormed forward, railguns and missiles tearing into the Zarkari fleet. Explosions bloomed in the dark like falling stars as the once mighty empire reeled under the unexpected counterattack. The battle was over before it truly began. Humanity had returned to the fight. A war reignited. When the dust settled, the Indomitable was finally safe. Medics flooded the medbay, rushing to stabilize Elias. The best doctors in the fleet worked tirelessly to save him. For the first time in days, Mira could breathe. She stood outside the medbay doors, exhausted but unbroken. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But something had changed. Hope had been rekindled. Elias had risked everything to save her. Now Mira would return the favor, not just for him, but for every human still under Zarkari rule. She turned as Rains approached, his uniform still stained with battle. "They want you on the bridge," he said. "Admiral Vasquez wants to talk." Mira took a deep breath. The war had taken her childhood. It had taken her home. But it had not taken her fight. She looked back at the medbay, at the man who had given everything for her. Then she squared her shoulders and walked toward the bridge. Humanity had been on the run for too long. Now it was time to fight back. Final words. The stars stretched before them, a battlefield waiting to be reclaimed. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in 20 years, humanity was winning.